What's up, everybody? Welcome to Sector for Nerds, and welcome to another episode of Star Wars The Clone Wars Retro Discussions. It's been about 2 weeks since our last episode. I thank all of you guys for being super patient, and in all honesty, just thank you guys for all of your support, period, on this show. I've really been enjoying making these videos so far. They're so much fun to put together. I think it helps that I just absolutely love talking about Clone Wars, so it just makes it all the much more enjoyable for me. So thank you guys for supporting the show. Thank you for everybody who likes the videos every week, everybody who watches every week. It very much means the world to me that you guys are supporting this show. Today we're going to be chatting about Season 1, Episode 16, The Hidden Enemy, an episode that was directed by Stuart Lee and written by Drew Z. Greenberg. The cookie for this episode: truth enlightens the mind, but won't always bring happiness to your heart. Wow, that's a deep cookie this week. Oh my gosh. Before I turn it over to Intro Guy, make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you guys could head over to Top 10 Character Moments, my second YouTube channel, subscribe there as well, would be greatly appreciated. Alright, Intro Guy, your turn. A planet under siege. Separatist forces mercilessly batter the beautiful and elegant world of Christophsis. Unable to defend themselves any longer, the people of Christophsis call upon the Jedi for assistance. Hoping to save lives and prevent further destruction, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker plan a daring ambush, which can turn the tide in the fight for this crucial star system. Thank you, Intro Guy, and you heard him correctly, folks. We are going back to Christophsis. Now, taking a little trip back to the time when I was 8 years old watching this episode for the first time. I don't know that, they're telling some of these episodes out of order. So when I watch this episode, I'm thinking oh, okay, this probably makes sense, right? So Obi-Wan and Anakin, they just got done on Pantora, and now they're getting called to Christophsis before they head back to Coruscant, right? They were probably heading back to Coruscant. They get the call from the people of Christophsis that, hey, we need help. Yoda's probably oh, okay, well, we already got Obi-Wan and Anakin out there. Let's just send them over to Christophsis. They haven't had enough battling. Let's give them more. Turns out that's not how it worked. Because as it turns out, there is a chronological order of watching these Clone Wars episodes. And for new viewers that get into the Clone Wars, it can get kind of confusing. And then you might ask, well, why do they tell the episodes out of order like this? Why do they do that? Let me just first say this, you guys. This is not the first show that's been guilty of doing this. There are plenty of other shows that have done this in the past, and shows that will probably do it in the future. It all just depends on the stories that they're trying to tell within the episodes themselves, what it is that they want people to get out of it. Because I think the reason why they would have put this episode where it was is the idea of there being a clone traitor, because that's what this episode is about. We've seen a traitor within the Republic before. In the Cloak of Darkness episode, Captain Argaius proved himself to be a traitor. And one of the things that I remember Dave talking about in that featurette was, well, originally it was going to be a clone, but we didn't want to have the idea of there being a clone traitor too soon. And you know what? I think it makes sense, because if you were going to do this, let's say you put this episode out first, before the Clone Wars movie, right? Then you're already conditioning people to think, oh, well, clones are traitors. But I think what Dave was trying to do and what George was trying to do is to get people to start caring about the clones and understanding hey, these are good people. You give us episodes like Rookies that feature a lot of clones. You want to start putting that stuff out there first before you give us a clone traitor, which I believe was the mindset that they had. Now, why they tell half of season 2 out of order, that I can't tell you. But again, there are plenty of other shows that have done this before, shows that I've seen that have done this, like the original Teen Titans show. I'm pretty sure it was the first episode chronologically of that show doesn't appear until the end of season 4 or something, or is it season 5? But it's not until later on in the show. Anybody that watched the original Pokemon series out there, I remember there was one episode, right, after Ash's Charmander had already evolved into either a Charmeleon or a Charizard, and then the next thing I know, there's an episode where he's a Charmander again, and I'm wait, what's this? All sorts of visible confusion on that one. So yeah, 8-year-old me was always confused, wait, why is General Losam out of I thought we captured him. Wait, what's the next part of your master's plan? Why are we about to have another Battle of Christophsis? Haven't we done this already? And then it turns out you get a little older and you start putting pieces together Oh, yeah, that makes sense. One of the things that our clone traitor does in this episode is sabotage the weapons depot. And that's one of the things that sort of explains why the Republic, it felt like, had so little artillery in that battle compared to the Separatists. Because you see, like, the Separatists with all these tanks, and it's like, well, where are all the Republic tanks? Like, we got the heavy cannons, that's pretty cool. But yeah, it turns out the reason for that, where are the gunships? Turns out the reason for that is because our traitor ended up sabotaging it. Now, who is that traitor? Well, let's start talking about this episode, because it starts out with Obi-Wan, Anakin, Cody, Rex. We got all the boys here. They get caught in a trap. They're both in like the North and South Towers. Anakin's in the South Tower, or no, Anakin's in the North Tower. Obi-Wan's in the South Tower. Obi-Wan's tower gets attacked immediately. There's a really cool scene where Anakin and the clones use cables on the guns to use them as zip lines to get across to the other building. I guess that was Dave's idea. I think from what he was saying in the featurette is the whole idea was he wanted to add something a little bit extra to this scene.
One of the fun things I always like to talk to the directors about is how we can make this way more exciting than what we read in the script.
We need an evac in the South Tower.
Roger that, South.
There was a really exciting scene in the beginning. Anakin's in one building and Obi-Wan's in the other.
South Tower. We're in the North.
Not for long.
I really wanted to amp this up, and let's have Anakin break the glass, shoot a cable, zip line over to the next building.
Blast them!
The directors really bring that kind of visual imagination that they blend with the writing to make it a great Star Wars moment.
Apparently, speaking of behind the scenes, that George was super hands-on with the writing process of the back half of season 1. And it was his idea to have the clone traitor. George also wanted a big clone base, so Killian Plunkett and his team put together a giant clone base for this episode. If I don't give enough love to everybody that worked on this show, then just know that in my mind and in my heart, I'm giving you guys all the praise in the world, because this show to me is just truly incredible. One of the clones before they leave steals a tactical droid head, and they're like, all right, maybe this will tell us how they knew our plan. And so they figure out, all right, they somehow had all our intel, but how? Turns out there's a traitor in our midst. So Obi-Wan and Anakin, they go behind enemy lines. That's like the big thing of this episode. You've got two different stories going. You've got Obi-Wan and Anakin going behind enemy lines. That's kind of like our B plot for this episode, with our A plot being Rex and Cody trying to find the traitor. And so they eventually figure out, like, all right, all these frequencies, they're coming from one area. It's Slick's barracks. So we gotta interrogate all his men. And so they do so. They're interviewing everybody, and everyone seems to be pretty clean. And then there's Chopper, old boy here, who's taking battle droid fingers, and it's like, huh. Okay, that's a little weird. I don't know if that's something a spy would do, but it is pretty suspicious, that's for sure. So Slick kind of frames him to be the spy, and then Chopper kind of fires back, right? Slick says, it's okay, you don't have to say anything until the Jedi come back and talk to you. Now, 8-year-old me didn't pick up on that right away. I'm still sitting here thinking like, okay, this Chopper dude's pretty suspicious. Not the first Chopper in Star Wars that I have a lot of questions about. But yeah, Chopper starts firing back, which would make sense, right? Like, if he was a traitor, he'd try and fire back, and if he was feeling cornered, right? But then Cody brings up the good point of, hey, Sarge, Slick, what did you mean until the Jedi come back? How did you know the Jedi were gone? Because remember, Obi-Wan and Anakin said, let no one know of our mission. So at that point, I'm like, oh, he's the traitor. And so he gets out of the area, he gets out of the barracks, he ends up blowing up the weapons depot, as I said earlier. Let's kind of transition, though, for a minute to the Obi-Wan and Anakin side of this mission, because they notice that droids are watching them as they're appearing to the base. But it's like, all right, nobody's trying to stop them. They get to the base, there's no one guarding it.
No guards, no barricades. Huh. You'd think the Separatist headquarters would be better protected.
Clearly, keeping us out is not what they intend.
They get into the base itself, and who do they find? Frickin' Asajj Ventress. And just immediately Ventress starts flirting with Obi-Wan.
So this is the belly of the beast.
Ventress. And here I thought this mission would be unpleasant.
The pleasure's all mine, my dear Obi-Wan. I've missed you.
The look Obi-Wan gives when she takes off her cloak. The one from the movie was funnier, though. You'll have to do better than that, my darling. The three of them get into this lightsaber battle, which is nice to have, always good to have a nice lightsaber battle in the Clone Wars. And I give Ventress a ton of credit here, because she's going up against Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. Those are like two of the best right there. Anakin's the friggin' chosen one. Like, the fact that she's holding her own against both of them, it's most impressive. Now, it does seem for a moment like the numbers game does get to Ventress, and then just immediately Ventress goes back to flirting with Obi-Wan.
Give up, Ventress.
I'm all yours, Obi-Wan. You've served your purpose.
We have to get back. Now.
It's already too late. So hard to know whom to trust these days, isn't it?
What's the plan, Master?
Bringing us here was a mistake, my sweet. You've overestimated your abilities.
Really?
Ventress makes a run for it, and she's like, come and get me, boys. And there's like an entire droid army backing her. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. But Obi-Wan and Anakin do end up making a getaway, and then that's where Ventress says, have General Loathsome delay the Jedi as long as possible. I'll need time to execute the next part of my master's plan. And then we see that ship that we see at the start of the Clone Wars movie. Like, during that Tom Kane intro, we see that squid-looking ship taking out, some of Jabba's ships and ends up capturing Jabba's son. Rex and Cody are sitting there looking for Slick. Slick's hiding in the vent. And there's a moment where, like, they both look up and you can clearly see his head there. Okay, Slick's not doing a good job here. He's not helping himself. But they act like they don't know anything, right? So it's like, oh man, he could disable us by taking out the power. He could take out the entire security system. And he's like, all right, just Rex, go to the south exit. I'm gonna stay here, get the power back up. That should help us. And Rex is like, all right, got it, no problem. And then all of a sudden, Slick comes down from the vent. Cody with just the biggest smile on his face. He knew what was coming. And he leaves his blaster on the table as bait, right? So Slick jumps down, picks it up, and he's like, hey there, Slick. Gun's empty. And then Rex shows up from behind him. I'm like, got him. Now, Rex, like a complete dumbass here, decides to put one hand on his blaster, giving the opportunity for Slick to fire back. Not with a blaster, but I mean, like, just grab the gun and take it out of his hand and, start fighting Cody.
All of you just blindly following orders! For what? At least I got something out of all this suffering. Yeah, I bet you sold out your brothers for some real shiny coin, huh?
And then frickin' Slick, oh, this part, every time I watch it, it just makes me cringe. Like, Slick takes Rex's leg and, like, snaps it in a direction that a leg is not supposed to go. It was to the point then where, like, when he is standing up at the end of the episode, I'm like, Rex, how are you not on crutches right now? But my man Cody, just arriving with a freaking knockout punch, takes him down. Slick is captured. And then you get, like, this scene with Obi-Wan and Anakin talking with Slick, and you get the clone theme playing in the background, too. It was one of those scenes where it was just, like, I felt like there was a lot that you got out of it, where you understood, like, Slick's motivations, you understood, like, yeah, okay, like, I guess I can understand why you did it, but you were still freaking wrong for doing it. Like, you really didn't help anybody. You sit there and claim you were trying to help your brothers, but at the end of the day, all you were really doing was helping yourself.
I love my brothers. You're too blind to see it.
If you loved your brothers, you wouldn't have put them at risk. You betrayed every one of us. Take him to lockup.
Were you able to salvage anything from the weapons depot?
Slick pretty much scorched the whole thing. That seemed to be what he was going for all along. We managed to save the heavy cannons, though.
Once again, making sense why at the start of the movies, that was like their only big artillery were those freaking cannons. So yeah, that concludes this episode. Another very much like a standalone episode similar to last week's episode. Only this one, though, when you do really think about it, I guess it is technically a part of like a 3-episode arc between an episode that we get in season 2, a little bit of foreshadowing, the episode that we get of Christophsis there. Then we've got this one, and then we've got the Clone Wars Wars movie. When thinking about putting this show together, I was thinking like, okay, do I want to go, when talking about Clone Wars, do I want to go in chronological order or do I want to go in release order? Now, I have seen the Clone Wars in chronological order several times before. And then I kind of told myself like, okay, let's kind of take it back, right? Like, I'm always sitting here talking about when I was 8 years old. That's like my freaking gimmick for this whole thing. When I was 8 years old. And I figured like, okay, well, if we're going to do that, if we're going to tell stories of like my thoughts of episodes from back then, comparing them to now, and just my overall viewing experience of those episodes, I figure, well, let's do this right then. Let's do it the way that you watched it at 8 years old. That is going to wrap us up for today. Next week, we are going to be talking about the next episode of Season 1 in the Clone Wars, Season 1, Episode 17. Oh, I don't have the name for this episode right here in my notes, but I think it's the Blue Shadow Virus, right, is what it's called, or that's at least what the episode is about. The next episode is about the Blue Shadow Virus. That'll be the next 2 weeks of episodes right there is on that little arc. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video with others to help support the channel, and I will see you guys next time.
Give up, Ventress.
I'm all yours, Obi-Wan.